What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Scott King here. Let's talk a little bit about deals. Boom. Alrighty, guys, once again, welcome back to the channel. Wanted to talk a little bit about deals. Now, I had something happen to me recently, and it's probably best to vlog about it. So what had happened was I had somebody, they called me up, they said they wanted a wedding, ceremony, cocktail, reception. Pretty normal sale, right? And then it happened to be on a Thursday, and I was talking to the lady, and she was booking a DJ for her daughter, and, well, she's a little older, right, older generation, and maybe didn't understand everything that was involved with what she wanted to do for her big day. Now, what had happened was she said she needed a ceremony, cocktail, reception, right? And then I did all the things that I normally do. Okay, well, we provide a lapel microphone and microphone on a stand in case you need it. And then, of course, for the cocktail hour, we run a playlist. And then for a reception, we have our own protocol of how we do things. Wasn't clear to me was that I had an assistant call me up who was helping to plan the wedding, and then told me there was a ton of things involved that I was unaware of. And maybe sometimes the client doesn't understand everything that's involved, and at the same time, maybe when you're doing your sales, it's important to tell somebody or explain to somebody all the things that are involved or what's needed. Now, what had happened to me was that the assistant called me up and starts talking about all these big terminology for doing like this big production. Well, what I mean was she asked me where front of house was going to be and how I was going to run a snake. Now, I explained to the assistant that this isn't what I sold. And at the same time, well, here we are with a situation where they want to have two guitarists, two extra handheld microphones, and a lapel for the officiant. And, well, the event's tomorrow. They might even have a bunch of other things that, they thought would just happen. Well, because I have a bunch of production gear, it's not a big deal for me to handle this request. And at the same time, I didn't charge properly for it. So as a company, I wouldn't want somebody to be left high and dry on their wedding day and then give them all these extra bills because I found out about it a couple days, before the event. So it's not really fair to me to have to do all these extra services, yet at the same time, I want to be able to accomplish all these extra services and still at the same time let the client know that this is me going above and beyond, because I was talking with Dion and he didn't want me to mention too much that I was going out of my way. Yet at the same time, you want to be able to position yourself in a spot where you're letting the client know that you're going the extra mile, because if they don't realize that you're doing extra things for them, they're going to think that was just expected. It's kind of like taking your kindness for weakness. Me, as a service-based industry, I wanted to make sure that they get handled or taken care of, or that the show goes flawlessly within reasonable constraints, because most wedding ceremonies, it's a lapel microphone, you're playing some music on an iPad, and then you call it a day. But these guys want a pianist, two guitarists, and then they're going to have a dual singing performance for the ceremony. On top of that, they're going to need a lapel microphone for the officiant. So as I'm talking to the assistant, she was telling me all this extra information, and, well, you have to handle that with care, because something that she said was, oh, you don't do rehearsals. No, I don't know where you got that information. We do rehearsals. We just charge for that time. And to them it was like, oh, really? You have to pay for your time? That's another thing, too. When you're selling to the mom, you tell her everything, and then not all that information gets sent to the assistant, where I guess the assistant runs these big productions at a church and expecting me to do the same thing for something I charge minimal for. Like, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, if you have one guitarist with a microphone, that's not a big deal. In fact, you're even covered with our package with an extra microphone. And then they started talking about DI boxes and plugging in 1/4-inch cords. They just expected all that to happen. And I don't know where the confusion was. I guess I have to go back and talk to the client and tell them that wasn't part of the deal. And at the same time, do you really want to make a big deal on someone's wedding day? I just want to execute it. And because I have the knowledge and the gear to be able to do it, I basically just hired an extra helping hand to help me with the day because it's more entailed than what I thought. And at the same time, I want the client to know that I went above and beyond, so that they know that I went above and beyond, and that not all this stuff was just expected. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing your sales calls, because you want to make sure that everything is explained properly and that it doesn't come back on you. Because if you have proper, paperwork printed out for what it is that you're offering, that they can't come back to you and say, oh, you don't have a microphone on a stand. You could be like, well, where on this paperwork does it say that I'm going to provide a microphone on a stand? This is where your client's imagination just starts to run wild. And they're like, oh, you don't do that? I had a client last week. They called me up and asked for a music stand, and I was like, well, we have a podium that goes out for $175. And then they said, oh, we'll figure it out. So that was a realization that I had recently. Another example, like our photo booth does 2x6 prints, or 4x6. They're 4x6, but they cut into 2, so it's 2x6. And then you get the film strip prints. And then the client was like, oh, I want, one large picture and make it a 4x6. And I was like, okay, that's fine. We can do that. It just costs an extra $100 because of, how much paper it's going to print, and, it's going to be more of an expense. So, and also on our end, it would have been a little bit more complicated to figure out how to make something that we're not, carbon copy to do. Yet we could figure it out, for the extra $100. And instead of, they didn't go for the extra $100, so I didn't have to figure it out. But yet that still let them know that, like, hey, look, this is what we offer. This is our carbon copy. If you want other things, we can do it. It's just an extra add-on. So that could be a way for you to make extra money or less hassle, depending on, what people think that you're offering. And at the same time, you want to make sure what you're offering and what you're selling is very clear, because you could save yourself on the back end. Like, hey, look, this is what you signed. This is what we promised we give you. Anything else is above and beyond, which we can do, just not expected to be done for free. And that could be, a little touchy depending on how you handle that situation. So if you end up saying the wrong thing, you could be caught down an alley that you wouldn't want to be caught down. And so just keep that in mind when you're doing your deals. And it's all a learning process. You'll probably get burned once or twice, and then you'll be like, oh, well, I need to change this in my offer, or I need to explain better to the person that I'm talking to when I do my sales call. And at the same time, not all of that information is going to be relayed to an assistant or something like that. So just keep that in mind. If you do a sale, make sure you're very clear that you can go back to what it is that you sold, and at the same time you have the proper documentation for everything that you did do, because you wouldn't want something to come back on you if something didn't go according to plan, and you can be like, well, I didn't know this ahead of time, or I didn't charge properly for this because this is way too much of a production, than what was explained to me in the sales call. Anyway, just something to keep in mind. Wishing you guys all the best. Again, if you want to learn how I was able to grow my company to 6 figures and more, hit the like button, join the Facebook group, ask questions, and we'll get you there. All right. Bye.